Hello, everyone. I am citizen spokesperson Doron Spielman. It is July 28, 2024. This is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokespersons Office. We are live on Instagram, on X, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn, and available afterwards wherever you get your podcasts. Please start submitting questions in the chat, like and subscribe to help us reach a wider audience. Today is day 296 of the October 7th war and the Hamas hostage crisis. Yesterday, Hezbollah murdered 12 children during a soccer game in a barrage of 100 rockets specifically aimed towards them in northern Israel. 100 rockets. That means that Iran's terror army in Lebanon tried 100 times to kill innocent civilians in Israel. Sadly, tragically, they succeeded. The children massacred by Hezbollah are members of the Druze, an Arabic-speaking minority in Israel. These are our children. Every child in Israel, whether they are Jewish, Muslim, Druze, or any other minority, are children of every person in our country. And all Israelis are mourning right now. While we mourn, Hezbollah is busy lying and trying to cover their tracks. They are claiming across the media and social media that it wasn't them. However, everyone knows it was them. And the launches have been tracked directly to their terror army. Iran and their mercenary army Hezbollah claim to defend Arab people, but that has never been true. And this tragedy is only one of many, many examples. In Hezbollah's 2006 war in Israel, half of the innocent civilians murdered by their Iranian rockets were Arab. Half. Over the last decade, Hezbollah spilled Arab blood across Syria and Iran and Iraq. And Hezbollah has long been oppressing the people of Lebanon. Since Hezbollah joined Hamas' war against Israel on October 8th, they have launched 6,000 rockets, missiles, and drones at northern Israel. Half of those people living in northern Israel are Arab Muslims, Christians, and Druze. Hezbollah knows this, but they shoot those rockets anyway. Arabs and Jews are equal in the democracy of Israel. And as we are equal in the democracy of Israel, Arabs and Jews are also equal as targets of Iranian terror. What's more, Iran is now warning Israel against reckless aggression while they try to deny yesterday's rocket massacre. Iran, in an act of aggression, kills 12 innocent children playing soccer and warn Israel against reckless aggression in responding. Iran wants permission to continue murdering children. Their cynicism knows no bounds, just as their cruelty knows no bounds. But there is a limit to Israel's restraint. As a dozen more families bury their young dead today, Israel's military has been striking Hezbollah deep in Lebanon, degrading its ability to harm people anywhere in Israel, whether they speak Hebrew, Arabic, or any other language. If Hezbollah does not stop its war and back off, Israel will force it to. Iran's missiles are not only directed at Israel, however. As they solidified Iran's control of Arab countries, Hezbollah was part of vicious assaults on Aleppo that left tens of thousands of Syrians dead. We've talked about Iran's proxies in Yemen, the Houthis, which are terror pirates, and their attack on Western sailors and global shipping. This affects everyone in the world. It affects you. It affects the price of food in your supermarket. It affects what you buy off the shelves of your local store. Their drone attack last week, which killed one and injured dozens in Tel Aviv, missed the US consulate by a few meters. Iran's proxies in Iraq and Afghanistan, including Hezbollah, have murdered thousands. That is thousands of US and Western troops. And Hezbollah itself murdered hundreds of US and Western troops in Lebanon. Last month, Hezbollah threatened to attack Cyprus, a member of the European Union. Yesterday, while Hezbollah sent missiles that killed those 12 children playing football in Israel, Iran at the same time took credit for attacking the US base at Deir Atzur in Syria. They attacked 3 times over 24 hours. In January, the Iranian Bak Taib, Hezbollah killed 3 US soldiers in an attack on Jordan, and at least 24 US troops were injured in attacks on their bases in Iraq and Syria. Right after Hamas, Iran's terror proxy army in Gaza, declared war on Israel, with its brutal rape and murder and rampage on October 7th. As we've mentioned before, Hassan Nasrallah, the warlord of Iran's proxy army in Lebanon, recently said, "We are oppressed in the region and attacked by the great Satan and the Zionists. During this time, we are blessed with the presence of Iran." You should know Iran calls Israel the little Satan. To Iran, the United States is the great Satan. Hezbollah's foreign policy chief last month said, "This is not a war with Israel. Israel is merely a tool. Our real war is with America." Iran is again shooting at American soldiers, and Hezbollah, an arm of Iran, is attacking Israel. They are one and the same, part of the same network of evil. Israel may be the closest target. However, make no mistake, they are targeting the West. Iran is targeting the West, including the United States of America and the entire West, which need to come together to support Israel as Iran's forces assault it, because Iran is ultimately interested in taking over the Middle East and in destroying the West. As Israel's Prime Minister said last week in Washington, D.C., for the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together, because when we stand together, something very simple happens. We win, they lose. I'd like to take some questions for our audience watching live on social media.
Michelle on YouTube asks, how are the Druze reacting to yesterday's horrific tragedy?
First of all, the Druze right now are burying their children. Today is the day where there are 12 graves lying open and 12 little bodies going to the ground. We have to understand the Druze is an incredible community of people, fascinating community of people, and they are located not only in Israel, they're located in Syria, they're in Lebanon, they're in Jordan. Collectively, they are calling on Iran and Hezbollah to back down. However, since they live in countries that Iran is controlling, like Syria and Lebanon, which are really just fronts for Iran, they have to be careful, because they, like everyone else that is in the sights of Iran, are being threatened. And if they step out of line just a little bit, we all know what could happen. But we can hear the courage of those who've called on Iran and Hezbollah to back down. They know, like we know, that Iran doesn't care if they're Arab, if they're Druze, or if they're Jewish. If they stand with the West and they stand for freedom, they are targets.
Next question comes from Benji Lewis on Instagram, who asks, why did the Iron Dome not intercept the rocket from Hezbollah yesterday?
Benji, thank you for your question. And I wish I had a better answer than the one I'm giving you. But as great as the Iron Dome is, and it is probably the most sophisticated missile defense system in the world, it is not 100%. Which means, Benji, that when Hezbollah launches rockets and missiles at Israel, they are intending to kill. And that is why Israel has to take these as a real threat. We can't stop 100% of their missiles and rockets. And therefore, even one, if it gets through those missile defenses, can cause a horrific tragedy like today with these 12 innocent children who were killed while playing soccer. That is why the world needs to understand. Israel is at war with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is trying to kill the Israeli people, and we as a responsible country, just like your country or any other country in the world, if we're attacked by rockets, even with strong defense, has to take that as a legitimate threat, and every legitimate threat is a legitimate target of force. And that is why Israel is striking Hezbollah in Lebanon today.
Margalit Iris writes on Instagram, thank you for these valuable daily briefings. How would you respond to foreign press reports saying the missile hit, quote, occupied Syrian land?
I think it's ridiculous that this is their focus. Again, first of all, they need to deal with the fact that the Druze are a protected minority only in one place in the world. They are only protected in Israel. The Golan Heights, which if you open up your history books and look to see how the Golan Heights are a part of Israel, is in response to an offensive launched against Israel both in 1967 and both in 1973, and that is recognized by many countries in the West, including the United States. We have to look through the international media at the deception, and we have to understand and refocus, put aside their deception and focus at the core. Israel protects the Druze minority. Israel is mourning the Druze, and Israel are the ones that are responding today inside Lebanon against Hezbollah, not Syria, which is just one more proxy of Iran.
Next question comes from Moran Tivonit, who asks, do the people of Lebanon resist Hezbollah?
People of Lebanon are trying to resist Hezbollah. The people in Lebanon have called on Hezbollah publicly, and we have to understand again how much courage this requires to leave southern Lebanon. But they know that Hezbollah doesn't really care about them. Hezbollah invests all of the resources not in feeding the people of southern Lebanon, not in bettering their lives, not in building universities and high-tech centers. There's no university of Hezbollah that are giving graduate degrees in medicine and in engineering. Hezbollah is only dedicated to destroying Israel and destroying the West. Therefore, while those of courage stand up and declare on them to leave, they know, just like we do, that Hezbollah cares more than anything about death, and that likely their words are falling on deaf ears. However, it's up to us, wherever you live, wherever I live, wherever people live in the Western world, to hear their words. We can't imagine that Hezbollah is going to hear the words of these people and lay down their arms. But it is up to the world to come together, to pull off the mask that Hezbollah is hiding behind, declare them a terror army, and support Israel in defeating Hezbollah and pushing them beyond the Litani River and force them to adhere to the United Nations Resolution 1701, which they violated by coming close to Israel's border. Let us, all of us, hear the voices of those people in Lebanon. Let them not be in vain.
Next question comes from Lenore Loves Mike on Instagram, who asks, will there be further evacuations in northern Israel?
We certainly hope not. There are already 80,000 people that cannot come to their home in Israel because Hezbollah is targeting civilian homes. However, if Hezbollah is putting an Israeli civilian in danger, we do everything we can to keep them safe. Our focus, though, could you imagine in your own country, if 80,000, 100,000, 1 million of your own civilians had to leave their homes because somebody was attacking? Of course, you would get them out of harm's way. But what would your focus be? It would be to protect your country, which is why Israel has a limit to our patience. Israel can only tolerate up to a certain amount until Hezbollah is forced to withdraw, go beyond the Litani River, stop attacking Israel so that we can return our people back home. If they don't, make no mistake, Israel's not going to remove more people from their homes and not allow 80,000 people to go back to their homes. We will defend our country, which is our moral right and the moral right of any independent country in the world.
Rogers4009 on Instagram asks, we know the Druze are loyal to the land they are on. However, we're hearing reports in America that some of the Druze inside Lebanon are possibly standing with Israeli Druze. Is that accurate?
First of all, you can imagine that we have to be very careful in answering this question. In Israel, the Druze are protected. It's the only place in the entire world that they are protected as a minority. In Lebanon and southern Lebanon, they're not protected. Iran is in control of southern Lebanon. Therefore, if they are standing together with Israeli Druze, we have to be incredibly careful. We can't put them at risk, and if they do so, I can guarantee you they're doing so very carefully. But what they are hoping is that people around the world will take up their plight. These 12 children who were killed were Israelis. They were Druze. We have to relate to them as innocent and free people who are targeted by Hezbollah, and we have to take up the cause that Hezbollah is a terror army. They must be defeated for the protection of Israelis, Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Druze, people of any background, because they are an enemy of every minority and anyone who is not like them. They are dedicated to a cult of death, and if you are dedicated to life, you are an enemy of Hezbollah.
Emmanuel from YouTube asks, why do you keep saying Israel is at war with Hezbollah and not with Lebanon when they are part of the Lebanese government and claim to be defending Lebanon?
First of all, Israel has said from the very beginning that we call on Lebanon as an independent country. If there is anything left to the independence of Lebanon, they can either hold up their hands and give up and allow Hezbollah to take over their country, or they can take a brave stand and preserve a bit of their national dignity and fight against Hezbollah. It shouldn't just be Israel that's fighting against Hezbollah. Hezbollah is an army of Lebanon. They are an army against Syria. They're an army against the United States. And therefore, we call on the government of Lebanon to stand up against Hezbollah. It is their responsibility. However, we have to understand, while Lebanon needs to stand up against Hezbollah, Lebanon is a proxy of the world center of evil, which is Iran. And therefore, words like Hezbollah, words like Hamas and the Houthis are really a code name for mercenary armies that are dedicated to the death of evil, dedicated to death from their masters that are living in Iran. If you want to find the source of evil in Hezbollah or in Hamas or in the Houthis, you find it in Iran. And that is who they are a proxy of.
Our next question comes from Eleanor on Twitter, who asks, living here in Tel Aviv, the risk of escalation with Lebanon and Hezbollah seems high. How seriously do you take this concern?
I think, Eleanor, we take it very, very seriously. I'm also sitting in Tel Aviv, and we have families all over Israel. Hezbollah is the largest terror army in the entire world. As vicious as Hamas is, with their 30,000 terror fighters, Hezbollah has 5 times that many terror fighters. They have been trained by Iran, outfitted by the Soviet Union, by Russia. They have 190,000 rockets and missiles, including precision-guided missiles, which is why Israel has been saying from the beginning, this is not just a small threat on the border. This is a terror army that have pointed their weapons in Israel and are now firing them at Israel. And again, just last week, we need to look no further than a rocket that hit the center of Tel Aviv from Yemen. These are all part of the same axis. Therefore, it is serious. The Israeli army and the government of Israel has said they are dedicated to protecting the state of Israel, which means, ultimately speaking, the complete demilitarization and defeat of Hezbollah's ability to endanger our citizens, including you, including me, including the 10 million people that live in Israel, including all of our minorities.
Now, last question today comes from Myra on Instagram, who asks, how can we help around the world with messaging regarding the Druze community and the hit in the north?
First of all, Myra, thank you. It means, first of all, to get the facts straight, the Druze are a protected and blessed community in the state of Israel. The state of Israel defends them like they defend every other person in the world that come to the state of Israel. And therefore, we need to get the facts straight. They are Israeli citizens. They are protected by Israel. They're being mourned by Israel, and they will be defended by Israel. All of the airplane strikes that are taking place on Hezbollah bases right now inside of Lebanon are not because of Jews or because of Christians. They're because of the Druze and the Israelis who are being targeted. That's number one. Number two, take to social media. Push these messages out there that Hezbollah aimed 100 times towards 12 children playing soccer on a hilltop in northern Israel, 100 times, and they were successful once and killed 12 children. And every one of the 6,000 rockets that Hezbollah aims throughout Israel, they're hoping, as sick and grotesque as this may sound, and while they may hide it afterwards and say it wasn't them, they're hoping for 6,000 soccer fields full of children. That is the truth. While we have perhaps a stadium of 2,000 people, 10 people may stand up and yell support of Hezbollah. If no one else yells, everybody will hear them. We need 20 people, 100 people, 1,000 people to stand up against Hezbollah, stand up for the safety of Israel and of the West, and to let your voices be heard. That is the answer. Speak. Don't just tune off. Don't just flick to the next station. Allow yourself to make a statement. Be courageous, because it's not only the Israeli voices we need to hear, it's the voices of the Druze community, those courageous Druze who are asking the world, help us, help Israel. And that's the answer. Thank you for all of your questions today. Please continue to follow us on X, on Instagram, on YouTube, and on all of your social media channels, on wherever your podcasts are available. You can hear this after the recording on podcast. Please join us every day, 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow.